I wasn't supposed to hear a man's voice in my own house. Not at midnight. Not coming from the baby monitor that sits on my nightstand. We don't have kids. That's the first thing you need to understand. That monitor? It was a cheap one I picked up at a garage sale last month because I'm paranoid about noises when I'm home alone. I use it to keep an ear on the downstairs area when I'm upstairs. Call me crazy, but I thought it would help me sleep better. Last night, around 12:17 a.m., the static on the monitor shifted, and I heard two voices. One of them was hers, Marlene's laugh, soft and careful, the laugh she used to give me when she was trying not to wake me while sneaking snacks in the kitchen. The other voice, deep and low, didn't belong in my house. I froze. Every instinct screamed to grab something heavy and storm downstairs, but I couldn't move. I just sat there in the dark, gripping the monitor so hard my hands hurt. "Don't worry, he's sleeping," she whispered. Sleeping? I wasn't asleep. I was wide awake, listening. The sound of a chair scraping across the floor came through next. I felt my stomach flip. I knew that sound. That was our kitchen chair. I crept down the stairs, every step creaking like it was tattling on me. The living room light was off, but I could see a faint glow from the kitchen doorway. My heart was pounding so loud I thought it would give me away. When I got close enough to see through the crack, I caught just a glimpse, her back against the counter, that red silk robe I bought her last Christmas slipping off her shoulder, and someone's shadow leaning too close. I didn't barge in. I didn't even breathe. I turned around and walked back upstairs like a coward, knees shaking so hard I nearly fell. I sat on the bed with the monitor still in my hand, listening as they laughed again, the kind of laugh that felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I don't remember sleeping. I just remember the silence around 1:30 a.m., the front door clicking shut, and her footsteps tiptoeing upstairs. When she slid into bed, her hair smelled like smoke and cologne. Not mine. And I can't stop wondering who the hell he was. I didn't confront her that night. I wish I could say I did, but I'm not that brave. I lay there in the dark pretending to be asleep when she climbed into bed, heart thundering, every nerve in my body screaming. The next morning, she was the same Marlene she always pretends to be, smiling, humming as she made coffee, wearing one of my old t-shirts like she's the loving wife I thought I married. But I couldn't even look at her. I felt sick, like the walls of this house weren't ours anymore. By lunchtime, I'd made a decision. I couldn't rely on the stupid baby monitor anymore. It had given me enough nightmares already. I drove to a local electronics store and bought a set of tiny security cameras. I told the guy behind the counter it was because I was worried about break-ins, but the truth? I needed proof. I needed to know if I was losing my mind, or if my wife was sneaking another man into our home while I was upstairs, clueless. I installed one camera in the hallway leading to the kitchen, another in the living room. I told myself I'd only check the footage if something fell off again. But deep down, I knew I'd be checking that footage every night. I'm that pathetic, that desperate. The following evening, everything seemed normal. We had dinner together, barely talked. She spent most of the night on her phone, fingers flying over the screen with little smirks she didn't bother hiding. When I asked who she was texting, she shrugged and said, "Sandra, you know, work stuff." I didn't believe her, but I nodded like a fool. Later that night, I pretended to fall asleep early, just to see what she'd do. Around midnight, I woke up quietly and checked my phone, pulling up the feed from the hallway camera. My heart nearly stopped. Marlene was downstairs. She wasn't alone. The camera caught her pacing by the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear. "Yeah, the back door's unlocked," she whispered. My skin went cold. A few minutes later, a tall figure in a dark hoodie slipped into the frame. I couldn't see his face, but I didn't need to. Just the way she leaned into him, like she was relieved, was enough to make my stomach twist. They didn't even turn on the lights. I watched them move through the living room, close, too close, and every second felt like I was being ripped apart. I should have stormed downstairs, but I just watched, paralyzed, like I wasn't even inside my own body. She laughed quietly as he whispered something into her ear. That laugh. I hated it. I hated her for giving it to someone else. When I finally worked up the courage to go downstairs, they were gone. The back door was closed. The kitchen looked spotless, like nothing had happened. But I knew better. I saw it all. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them together, and I swear I could still hear his voice echoing in my head. I woke up the next morning with one thought pounding in my head. I needed to catch them. Not just on camera this time, but in real life, face to face. I couldn't keep living like a ghost in my own house, pretending not to see the cracks in my marriage. Marlene acted completely normal at breakfast, chatting about how her coworker's dog had puppies and how we should get one. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask her what it felt like to look me in the eye after sneaking around with a man whose name I didn't even know. But instead, I nodded and poured her another cup of coffee like a coward. I spent that entire day thinking of ways to expose her. By evening, I had a plan that made me feel both sick and excited. I told Marlene I'd be out late because of work. I don't even know why I still make excuses to her. Like she'd care where I went when Dean, or whatever his name is already filling in for me. My idea was simple. I would park my car a few streets away, sneak back to the house on foot, and see if she brought him over. It sounds insane, I know, but when your world is crumbling, logic isn't the thing that drives you anymore. Around 11 p.m., I left the house, but instead of going to work, I parked 2 blocks away and crouched in the dark, watching the windows like some pathetic detective in a bad movie. At first, nothing happened. Marlene stayed in the living room, scrolling on her phone, sipping wine. Every second that passed made me doubt myself. Maybe I was losing it. Maybe I'd built this entire story in my head, and she really was just texting Sandra. Then, at 11:42, my stomach dropped. The motion sensor on the back camera lit up on my phone. Someone was at the back door. A tall figure, the same hoodie. He slipped inside like he'd done this 100 times. I felt my pulse hammering in my ears. They didn't waste time. Within minutes, she walked up to him, hugged him, and the way she melted into his arms, it was like I'd never existed. I felt like my chest was being ripped apart. I should have gone in right then, but I didn't. I stayed crouched outside, frozen. They moved into the kitchen, and I could hear faint voices through the open window. He called her baby. I almost lost it. But instead, I grabbed my phone and started recording through the window, zooming in on their silhouettes. I don't know what I planned to do with the footage, but I needed evidence that I wasn't crazy. And then it happened. Something I wasn't ready for. Marlene turned toward the window and looked out like she knew I was there. Our eyes didn't meet. She couldn't see me in the dark, but something in her body language changed. She whispered something to him, and he walked to the back door, slowly, like he was checking. I ducked behind the trash bin, heart slamming against my ribs. He stepped outside, scanning the yard, and for a second, I swear he saw me. He just stood there, staring into the night, like he was daring me to show myself. I didn't. I waited until he went back inside before I bolted to my car, hands shaking so hard I almost dropped my keys. I didn't sleep at all that night. I sat in my car down the street, watching the house until the lights went off. I felt like a stranger to my own life. The next day felt like one long hallucination. I went through the motions, showering, making coffee, pretending to read emails, but my brain wasn't in my body. Every time I looked at Marlene, I saw her leaning into that hooded stranger's chest, whispering in his ear like he was her husband and I was the intruder. She moved around the kitchen like nothing had happened, humming while making breakfast, barefoot and calm, like she wasn't hiding anything. That made me feel even more insane. How could she act so normal? How could she smile at me with those same lips that had whispered to him just hours ago? I wanted to scream, to grab her shoulders and demand answers, but instead, I sat there quietly, biting my tongue until I tasted blood. When she left for work, I told myself I was done being weak. I went to my laptop, pulled up the security footage from the night before, and pressed play. My stomach knotted the second I saw him step through the back door like he owned the place. Marlene met him in the hallway with that smile I hadn't seen in months, the smile that used to be mine. She touched his arm as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I watched them move around our kitchen, while my hands gripped the desk so hard that my knuckles turned white. Then something happened that made my blood run cold. At one point, while Marlene stepped into the pantry, he walked straight up to the hallway camera. He stared directly into it, his face still covered by the shadow of his hood. It was like he knew I was watching, like he wanted me to see him. Then he leaned forward, so close that the camera almost couldn't focus, and he raised one finger to his lips. SH. I slammed my laptop shut and nearly fell out of my chair. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. That wasn't just some random guy. That was someone who wanted me to know. Someone who wasn't afraid of me. I spent the rest of the day pacing the house like a trapped animal, checking the locks every 10 minutes. replaying his silent message in my head. I kept thinking about the way Marlene had looked at me that morning, so calm, so ordinary, as if she wasn't sneaking a stranger into our home at midnight. Was this guy dangerous? Did she even realize what kind of person he might be? Or worse, did she already know exactly who he was and not care? By evening, I had a plan. I told Marlene I was going to stay late at work again, but this time, I wasn't just going to hide and watch. I was going to catch them both off guard. I wanted to see her face when she realized I wasn't the clueless husband she thought I was. But as I parked my car a few streets away and crept toward the house, I couldn't shake this gnawing feeling that I wasn't just chasing the truth anymore. I was walking straight into something I couldn't control. When I got to the backyard, I saw it. The back door wasn't just unlocked this time. It was open. A faint glow of light spilled out onto the grass, and I heard voices inside. My breath caught in my throat. They were talking low, but not low enough. Marlene's voice, nervous and fast. His voice, calm and sharp. I don't remember deciding to step inside. I just know I crossed that threshold, slow and quiet, phone in my hand, recording everything. My heart was thundering, my mouth dry, and every part of me was screaming that this was a mistake. But I needed to know what they were saying. The moment I stepped into the kitchen, I felt the weight of the silence hit me like a brick. They had stopped talking. I froze in the shadow of the doorway, holding my breath, my phone still recording as my thumb trembled over the screen. From where I stood, I could see just a sliver of the scene. Marlene standing near the counter, her robe pulled tight, and that man, tall and motionless, standing too close to her. His presence filled the room like a storm waiting to break. I was terrified he would notice me, but I couldn't back out now. Not after all the nights I had tortured myself with questions. Then he spoke, his voice low and controlled. He's going to find out eventually. You can't keep hiding it. Those words hit me like a punch to the chest. My stomach twisted. I didn't even understand what he meant. Hiding what? My mind spun out of control, every horrible possibility flashing through my head at once. Marlene said nothing for a long moment. Then, with a trembling voice, she whispered, "I just need more time. He's not ready. He'll fall apart if he knows the truth." I almost dropped my phone. What truth? What was I not ready for? My entire body shook, and every nerve screamed for me to burst into the room and demand answers. But I stayed rooted in place, my fear and confusion holding me still. I listened as their voices lowered again, too quiet to make out the words, but the tone told me everything. They were arguing about me. I was the problem. I was the one being discussed like some fragile child who couldn't handle reality. Then something strange happened. He walked toward the kitchen table, pulled out a chair, and sat down like he belonged there. Marlene turned away from him and rubbed her hands over her face, like she was on the verge of crying. I had seen that gesture before, but never because of me, at least not when I was standing right there. My chest tightened, and my head felt like it was full of static. I couldn't breathe. Suddenly, my phone buzzed with a notification, and the sound felt like a gunshot in the quiet house. The man's head snapped up, and I saw the glint of his eyes beneath the hood. He stood slowly, his posture tense, like a predator who had just sensed prey. My blood ran cold. I stumbled backward into the hallway, trying to silence the phone, but the screen slipped in my sweaty hands and hit the floor with a loud crack. "Curtis." Marlene's voice cut through the air like a knife. I froze. She sounded both shocked and terrified, which only made my heart race harder. I wanted to run, to hide, but it was too late. She appeared in the doorway, her face pale, her eyes wide with something I couldn't read. Was it guilt? Fear? Anger? The man stepped behind her, still silent, still watching me like I was nothing but a nuisance. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice trembling but sharp. I wanted to say something, anything, but my throat was dry. I opened my mouth and nothing came out except a broken, "Who is he?" She didn't answer. She just looked at me, then at him, and the silence between them felt heavier than any truth she could have spoken. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might explode. I turned and ran before either of them could stop me. I ran out the back door, across the yard, and didn't stop until I was in my car with my hands shaking so badly I could barely start the engine. That night, I parked in a random lot and sat there for hours, trying to process what I'd heard, what I'd seen. He'll fall apart if he knows the truth. Those words kept replaying in my head. I was terrified of what the truth even was. Was this more than an affair? Something darker? I don't know anymore. All I know is that Marlene looked more scared of me overhearing them than I ever expected. And that man, he looked at me like I wasn't supposed to be there, like I'd broken some unspoken rule. I'm writing this now from the driver's seat, my laptop balanced on my knees, because I don't even want to step back inside my own house. I can't. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. I didn't sleep. I sat in that empty parking lot until the sun began to rise, gripping the steering, well, like it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. The words kept echoing in my head. He's not ready. He'll fall apart if he knows the truth. What truth? What was so awful that my own wife thought I couldn't handle it? I replayed every moment of the night before. The way Marlene froze when she saw me, the silent stare from that hooded man, the way neither of them rushed after me when I ran. It was as if they expected me to leave, as if they'd already decided I wasn't part of this anymore. By 7 a.m., I realized I couldn't stay away forever. I had to face it. I had to go back home. My hands were shaking as I drove, my stomach churning with dread. The house looked normal from the outside, but as soon as I stepped through the front door, I felt something wrong in the air. It was too quiet, too still. There were no signs that anyone had been there the night before. No wine glasses, no crumbs on the counter, no trace of him. It was like they'd cleaned everything to erase him from existence. Marlene was in the kitchen, dressed in her work clothes, hair tied back neatly like nothing had happened. She looked up from her coffee and smiled in that careful way she does when she's testing the waters. "You're home early," she said softly, like she hadn't seen me run out of the house like a lunatic just hours before. I stared at her. I wanted to scream, to demand who he was, what she meant about the truth, but the words stuck in my throat. I muttered something about not feeling well, and she tilted her head, watching me like I was a puzzle she didn't feel like solving. "You should rest," she said, her voice too calm, too smooth. "We can talk tonight." Talk. That was the last thing I wanted. I didn't trust her voice, her face, or her promises anymore. As soon as she left for work, I tore through the house like a madman, looking for anything that could explain what I'd seen. I checked her phone, but it was locked. I searched the trash, the laundry basket, even the attic. Nothing. It was like the night before had been a hallucination, except I had the footage to prove it. When I checked the camera feed again, something was different. The footage of last night was gone. Every single clip after 10 p.m. had been erased. My stomach dropped. I hadn't deleted it, and I'm the only one who should know the password. That meant someone had been inside my system, someone who wanted me blind. I sat there, staring at the blank footage, feeling more exposed than ever. Whoever that man was, he wasn't just some fling. He was careful. He wanted me to know enough to break me, but not enough to stop him. And Marlene, she was in on it. That night, I didn't tell her I knew the footage was gone. I didn't even mention it. I just acted quiet and distant while she scrolled on her phone, pretending everything was fine. Inside, I was boiling. I wanted to rip that phone out of her hands and smash it. Instead, I waited until she went to the shower. I crept into the hallway and unlocked her laptop with the password I guessed from memory. It was the name of her childhood dog. My heart stopped when I saw her email inbox. There were messages from someone named D. The most recent one had no subject line. It just said, "He's starting to notice. We need to move faster." I swear my entire body turned cold. Move faster? What the hell did that mean? Move where? Do what? I scrolled down through their old messages, but most were deleted, leaving only fragments of conversations, short, cryptic exchanges like "tomorrow night," and "he won't be a problem." When she came out of the shower, I closed the laptop and sat on the couch like I'd been there the whole time, my mind screaming. I don't know if she noticed my hands trembling, but she didn't say anything. That was when I realized I wasn't just dealing with betrayal. This wasn't just some affair. There was something else going on, something darker. And I needed to find out what it was before I became the problem they were talking about. I couldn't stop thinking about that email. He's starting to notice. We need to move faster. It wasn't the kind of message lovers send each other. It sounded like a warning, a plan, like I was some obstacle they had to remove. That thought wouldn't leave my head, and by the next day, it had completely consumed me. I couldn't work, I couldn't eat. Every time I looked at Marlene, I felt like I was staring at a stranger wearing my wife's face. That night, after she fell asleep, I opened her laptop again. I knew I was taking a risk, but I didn't care anymore. I dug deeper into the files, searching for anything connected to D. Most of their emails were wiped, but I found one older message that had an attachment, an image file. My hands were trembling as I opened it, and when I saw the man's face for the first time, I felt the air leave my lungs. He wasn't just some random guy. He looked familiar, in that unsettling way where you can't place someone but you're sure you've seen them before. He had sharp features, dark eyes that looked like they were staring through the camera, and a scar running down the side of his neck. I zoomed in, trying to figure out where I'd seen him, and then it hit me like a truck. I had seen him months ago, standing across the street from our house late at night. Back then, I thought he was just some stranger passing by, but now I realized he'd been watching us, watching her. A chill ran through me as I remembered that night. I'd looked out the window and saw him standing there, still as a statue, and when our eyes met, he didn't flinch or move. He just turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows. My hands shook as I closed the laptop. Who was this man? And why was my wife meeting him in the middle of the night? I wanted to confront her right then, to wake her up and scream the questions that were tearing me apart, but I didn't. I couldn't. Something told me I needed to be smart about this. The next day, I called in sick to work and spent hours tracking down that image. I ran it through reverse image searches, social media profiles, anything I could think of. Finally, I got a hit. His name wasn't Dean, like I had assumed. His name was Darren Cole, and according to the scraps of information I found, he'd been arrested years ago for assault and breaking into someone's home. My stomach turned. This wasn't just a man my wife was seeing. This was someone dangerous. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at his mugshot, my mind spinning. Was she with him willingly? Or was she scared of him too? I couldn't figure it out, because every time I looked at her lately, I couldn't tell what she was thinking. That night, I decided to push her, just a little. Over dinner, I casually asked, "Hey, do you know anyone named Darren?" The fork froze in her hand. For a split second, I saw something flash across her face. Fear, guilt, I don't even know. Then she smiled, forced and tight. "No, why?" she asked, trying to sound casual. I shrugged, acting like it was nothing, but inside, my heart was pounding. She was lying. I could see it all over her face. Later, when she went to bed, I checked the cameras again. I had set up 2 more hidden ones, one near the garage, one by the side gate, because I had a feeling he'd come back. And I was right. At 12:13 a.m., I saw him again, standing at the edge of our backyard, just out of reach of the porch light. He wasn't trying to get in this time. He was just standing there, watching, like he was waiting for me to notice. I couldn't sleep after that. I sat in the living room with a baseball bat, every creak of the house making me jump. I'm not even sure what I'm more afraid of anymore. That my wife is cheating on me, or that this man isn't just here for her, but for me. I couldn't keep living like this, waiting, guessing, drowning in my own paranoia. That night, I decided I would end it one way or another. If Darren came back, I was going to confront him. No more hiding behind cameras or screens. No more sleepless nights wondering what my wife was whispering behind closed doors. I sat by the window with the baseball bat across my lap, the security feed open on my phone, my nerves strung tight like wires ready to snap. At 11:58 p.m., I saw movement on the camera near the garage. Darren was back, stepping into the yard with the same calm, deliberate walk that made my blood boil. I didn't wait this time. I threw the door open and stormed out, heart pounding so loud I could barely hear myself shouting. "Who the hell are you? What do you want?" Darren froze, his hood half pulled up, his sharp features catching the light. For a moment, we just stared at each other. I expected him to threaten me, to lunge at me, but instead, he raised both hands slowly, like he was trying to show me he wasn't a danger. "Curtis," he said, and his voice wasn't the cold, taunting tone I'd imagined. It was steady and almost gentle. "You need to calm down. I'm not here to hurt you." "Then why are you here?" I shouted, gripping the bat tighter. "Why are you sneaking around my house? Why is my wife meeting you at night? What's going on?" Before he could answer, Marlene's voice cut through the night. She ran out of the house, barefoot, panic on her face. "Curtis, stop. Please." She stepped between us, her hands trembling as she reached for mine. "You don't understand," she said softly, her eyes glistening. "Then explain it." I demanded. I felt like my whole body was shaking, my breath coming in harsh bursts. Marlene took a deep breath, looking from me to Darren. I didn't know how to tell you. I've been working with Darren for months. He's a private investigator I hired. It's about your father. My father. The name hit me like a wave. I hadn't spoken to him in years, not since he vanished from my life, leaving nothing but unanswered questions. What about my father? I asked, my voice cracking. Darren stepped forward, carefully. Curtis, your father's been looking for you. He's been trying to make contact, but he's not in the best shape. Marlene reached out to me because she didn't want to scare you. We've been trying to gather information before we told you. The late-night meetings? The secrecy? It was all about protecting you, not hiding anything from you. I felt my grip on the bat loosen. Protecting me? From what? From the truth hitting you too hard, Marlene said, tears streaming down her face now. Your dad's been living off the grid, but he's sick. He wants to make things right before it's too late. I just didn't know how to tell you without hurting you. I was trying to give you time. For the first time in weeks, the weight on my chest began to lift. I felt stupid, guilty, and relieved all at once. The paranoia, the jealousy, the nights of imagining the worst, they all crumbled under the reality of what I was hearing. Darren lowered his hands and gave me a nod. She loves you, Curtis. Everything she's done has been for you. I looked at Marlene then, really looked at her. She wasn't the villain I'd painted her to be in my mind. She was tired, scared, but her eyes, those same eyes I'd fallen in love with, were full of something real. I dropped the bat and pulled her into my arms, holding her like I hadn't in months. I'm sorry, I whispered into her hair. I thought I was losing you. You never lost me, she said, hugging me tighter. You're my whole world. I just didn't want to see you break. The three of us sat in the kitchen for hours that night, talking. Darren showed me the files, the letters my father had tried to send but never found the courage to mail. It wasn't easy, and I knew there were hard conversations ahead, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hope. Marlene and I are closer now than we've ever been. I took down the cameras. I don't need them anymore. Last night, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, she rested her head on my shoulder and said, "See? Not every shadow is a monster." For once, I believed her.